Let me ask you an honest question. Is your event business profitable? In fact, do you even know what a profitable business is? I feel that there's a lot of terms that are being thrown around about revenue, profit, net profit. And for some people, it naturally comes to you firsthand, while some of us are in the clouds when it comes to this conversation. The reason why we're talking about this is because some of you have deposits coming in all the time. In fact, you have money coming in so frequently that you just naturally assume that your business is profitable. You have calendars filling up, you're getting invoices coming in, contracts getting signed. So you feel as if you're on top of the world until you start to go to your bank account and you feel as if, where's all the money going? Or the worst part, you don't realize until tax season that it's just not adding up the way that you hope it would. So today I want to have an honest conversation because you may see people that are booked and busy, but that does not naturally equate to being profitable. And the reason this is happening is because a lot of event professionals do not know all of the cost that goes into you truly running your business and, most importantly, having a profitable business. And I want that for you. Instead, we're going to be focusing on what are the signs inside of your business to understand if you are truly profitable. So I'm going to encourage you to take out your pen and paper, get ready to take some notes. So let's dig into today how to calculate your profit inside of your company. So this episode of the Hustle Free Entrepreneur is a little bit different than other ones where I'm typically interviewing guests or I'm teaching you something about the industry. But this conversation I thought was super important because one, tax season is upon us. Two, I've been doing a lot of mentoring at different entrepreneur centers that are local, as well as one online group that I do support. And the thing that keeps coming up is on pricing and understanding what are the things that you need to consider when it comes to pricing your business effectively to be able to have profit. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's been times inside of my business where it has not been profitable. It's not because there's been a lack of revenue. It's either been because I wasn't 100% clear by hiring this one person. Yes, it added capacity, but I wasn't clear about how much more my company needed to make to justify hiring that person. And I think there's things that can unexpectedly creep up that gets in the way with really great businesses and great founders to honestly keep their doors open and making what you are wanting to make. Because your revenue is not your profit. Your revenue is not your salary at all. There's things that are costing you, regardless if you're aware of it or not, to actually run your business effectively. And I want for you to be able to know what those things are. So let's dig into the first conversation. Revenue is not profit. Say it with me. Revenue is not profit. I know that the social media experts and gurus of the world, they have everyone aiming for six figures, but they are often talking about six figures and revenue, and that is not profit. The biggest thing that you want to understand when it comes to this is that your business, especially for those of you in the event industry, and it depends on what services you provide or what capacity your business operates, you are going to have costs that are associated per event, and there are going to be costs that are going to be associated with you just overall running your business, which is going to be considered your operating costs. The costs that are associated to you doing your event, I kind of like to look at that as like the cost of goods sold for your services. So for me, I do event coordination. I bill my clients for everything inside of our business, but on two different invoices. I'm not going to dig into that. But if I bill a client for a DJ, caterer, and these other things, that is not my profit. All of that money is going through my business. So again, if I look and see, oh, my business made 200,000, my business made $500,000, how much did the business actually keep is going to be a part of the gross profit. So the way you want to look at your revenue is thinking my revenue is going to be subtracted from the cost of me operating per event. So that's going to be your cost of good. That's going to give you your gross profit. What is left over with your gross profit is going to then be a part of your operation cost. That's going to be your subscriptions. That's going to be your CRM. That's going to be your mailbox. That's going to be you annually renewing your business licenses. It's going to be the things that it doesn't matter if you get one client in, they're going to be due regardless. So it's important to understand what your operation costs inside of your company. The reason why this is so important is because if you're not aware of what your operation costs are, you can be pricing your services at a price that will never be able to pay you what you need to pay, put money aside for taxes, put money into a profit account so that you can continue to reinvest inside of your business. I've seen this, I've lived this, and it doesn't feel good to know that you had all this money coming in, but then you aren't really paying yourself what you need to pay yourself, especially when you have team members. I know it feels different when it's only you, but when you have to cover salaries and you have to cover paying people to help you with executing things, you have to understand these costs. So as much as it might be easy to look to your left and your right and be like, oh, this person is charging $8,000 for this service, or my competitors are charging $500 for doing balloon arches, you don't know how much it costs for them to run their business. Just like you may not know how much it costs for you to run yours. So that's why I always tell people to always just look at, it's good to be aware of what the industry standard is. Yes. So don't get me wrong about that. But if you are making up prices without having this clarity, you'll find that one, you might have to do 300 events a year just to pay yourself the salary that you're wanting to pay yourself, which is not going to be great. Or even if someone has a higher price service where someone's paying you $15,000 to $20,000, don't forget the tax component of that. So like you can be making a lot of money, but if you don't know how much it's costing you to run it and how much you're going to be paying in taxes, and believe me, I am a fan of knowing how to reduce your taxable liability, but you don't want to be out here doing fraudulent behavior to get your business closed. So you want to do it correctly. So I did end up finding this really great statistic that said that many event businesses operate with profit margins between 10 to 20% once expenses are included. The best thing that I always recommend for people to have clarity as to like, how much are you paying for marketing? How much are you paying for your insurance? Like for myself, my insurance annually is around $4,000 because I work with corporate clients and they require crazy insurances for my specific service. So some of you probably have higher insurances where some of you may only get insurance on the day of. You just got to know how much does it cost for you to run your business. So one of the reason why I thought that this was important is because even if you're making $800 in profit, or let's say $1,000 in profit, for myself as a single woman, I usually estimate that 20 to 25% of my money is going to taxes. So if I make $1,000 in gross profit, I know that I am going to be responsible for sending Uncle Sam $250 roughly. It's going to be less once you take into account for expenses and things like that. Yes. But if I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I just pocketed $1,000, no, I did not. I mean, you can, but you're going to have to pay it. So it's just important to know that what you bring into your business, you do want to know how it's supposed to be going out. So the major takeaway on this part of the lesson is stop just chasing after revenue. You need to have clarity as to what it costs inside of your business and understanding what are the costs that are associated with you operating your business. It doesn't have to be something that's going to be overwhelming or stress you out, because I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying, look at the data. It's there. Look at your bank statements. Understand what is coming out of your bank accounts, because if you face it or you don't face it, it's happening regardless. So let's dig in. The second lesson is that there always are going to be hidden costs with you running your business. So it's important to not ignore it. Recently, I was actually going through my spreadsheet that I use to keep on top of like estimates on what I can expect inside of my business, clarity as to what my subscriptions were a couple of months ago, because it just helps. And what I even do is put that in the show notes because it's a free resource that I offer through my business where you can plug in the numbers yourself. And it's really helpful. I don't do the spreadsheet each and every month, but I typically will look at it at least once a quarter. And the reason why is because the reason I'm about to share right now, I started looking at some of my subscriptions. Most of them had increases, and majority of those increases were not communicated. And if they were, I didn't see it. And so I was looking at some things that might have only cost me $25. Now they're $45. It may only be $20 increase, but when you look at the percentage of that, that's almost double. So I had to look at, okay, how much does it really cost me to run my business right now? In all transparency, it might make some of you overwhelmed. And I don't even have like a commercial space. I mean, I work out of a co-work office. My operating costs just for me running my business is close to like 4 grand before I pay myself right now. And I'm always looking at ways to be able to reduce it. So if you multiply 4 grand times 12, that's how much gross profit bare minimum. That's not even close to it because it still doesn't take in consideration tax or my salary. And this is why you have to know what are those hidden costs. So some of the things that you may be overlooking is how much are you putting towards your transportation, which is going to be important for you, one, to track your mileage. If you're watching this and you're in the event industry, we should be tracking our mileage. We should be keeping on top of how much we're paying towards gas and things like that. And the reason why I like the spreadsheet is because you can actually put a line item that you're allocating X amount of money towards gas inside of your business monthly. Because again, all of this stuff is coming out regardless. So it's better to look and see, okay, I'm on average spending $120 a month just on getting gas for my business. Understand those things. You want to think about your insurance. You want to also think about marketing and advertising. I know a good amount of you are using boosting your ads. I mean, like boosting your posts, or you're running actual targeted ads, whatever you're doing with that. Knowing what it costs for you to maintain your website and or have it hosted, because again, those can be monthly costs or annual costs. Just because it's important to understand, even if you're doing it annually, wouldn't it be nice to actually have an account, a bank account that is going to allow for you to put money to the side where you can like trickle in extra $10 every month so that when it comes down to you doing your annual, you don't have to find the money. You've already been planning for the money. That's the whole point of the hustle free entrepreneur is I want for y'all to stop hustling. Like really put on your CEO boss hat, like where you're like, I am on top of this. I need to know what's coming in my bank account. I need to know what's going out. I want for you to start thinking about how do you start putting money to your retirement? How do you start hiring the people that you want to invest in your business, maybe to scale your business? Like it's not going to just happen overnight, but if it's not even on your radar and you're not being strategic with the fundamentals of it, it's hard to get there. It's not to say that you won't. It's just that you're probably going to have a lot more learning lessons through the process compared to you just being proactive with it. So thinking to yourself, if I had a virtual assistant, this is how much I'm paying. Like I spend annually close to, I think, ten to $12,000 for an assistant who works with me very part-time to help and support with both this business and my event business. So it just comes down to how much hands-on you need, if you need more with the administrative side or if you need support with actually doing the event setups and things like that. Just know that inside of your business. And the reason why you want to know this part is because this is what's going to help with you gauging how many events you really need to be able to take on to be able to cover these costs. I've been recently sharing on TikTok how to actually figure out your hourly rate with taking in consideration your operation costs. And people have been really responding well to it because they're like, I never thought of this. Like I was doing some equations on some hypotheticals and it came to be like for someone to be able to pay themselves $60,000 a year, plus putting money towards taxes, plus putting money to profits. And if they had a very reasonable, like $500 a month for their operation costs, I figured out that some people will need to be doing over 100 plus bookings a year. Depending on the services that you offer and how you're pricing it, you may not want to do 100 events a year. And this other part to it is that if it takes you 15 to 20 hours to execute one event, how do you even accomplish 100 events a year at that low price point? And that's why I don't want for people to look to your left and your right, because you may be working harder because you're trying to compete on a cost that never was going to work. So you want to look at what are the hidden costs inside of you doing your business and for it to operate, because you'll be surprised when you pull up your actual bank statements. You'll see this thing is $12, this thing is $20. Oh, this was $100. Like, I just renewed my business insurances. I just renewed my business license, and I found out because my business operates fully also in another state that I should have had a business entity set up in those states as well. So I had to come up with $400 to then get that set up properly. So I've been set up in the state I'm in, but I had to find out that I needed to be set up in another state. But if you're not putting money to the side, you won't be able to reinvest back into your business. So you do want to take down pen and paper to have an idea of what it costs for you actually to run your business, because there's some hidden costs that you may not be aware of, and you want to just go ahead and face it. I hope you've been enjoying this episode thus far, and I understand how overwhelming it can be with understanding this information inside of your business. That's why I've created the CEO Review Room for entrepreneurs just like you. I understand how challenging it can be at times to be a thriving business owner in the event industry, and how much time it takes because we're so busy from day to day. So I find that a lot of us are too busy to take the time to sit down and review which events are really making money, where the profit was lost, and what systems need to change so that we're able to make the type of income that we're needing to make in our business. Inside of the CEO Review Room, we do quarterly business reviews geared towards each entrepreneur in this membership. So you can see actually what is working inside of your business and what needs to get fixed with my guidance. Because profitability doesn't just happen from working harder. It comes from understanding your numbers and building better systems to hit your goals. Take a moment to scan this QR code so that you can join the community. I look forward to seeing you in there. Back to this episode. Okay, so now we're going to dig into how do you actually calculate the cost and things to consider that come along with this. So we're going to keep it super simple. Again, I am not an accountant. I'm just a business owner sharing my journey with other people through the stupid mistakes I've made that I don't want you to make. And the thing about entrepreneurship that I've found is that there's information accessible, but there's also things you don't know that you don't know. Like I mentioned about me realizing that I needed to have a foreign business entity set up in another state. I wasn't aware that you needed to do that. I knew that whatever state your physical business was in, you needed to have your business actually set up. But I wasn't aware that if you are doing steady business in another state, that you should be setting your business up as a foreign business entity and filing taxes for that specific state. And I'm still learning through this. I have a conversation scheduled with my accountant and my tax preparer because that has never come up. I haven't lived in DC since 2022, 2021. And so no one's brought this up to me. So we're going to figure this out together. I'll keep y'all updated if you want to know. So the biggest thing you want to think about is when you're coming up with your pricing so that you're pricing for profit, is that you want to have clarity on what salary you actually want to make inside of your business. It's not for me to tell you what salary you should, because everyone has different intentions. But one thing I would encourage you to do, you know yourself. You know what will keep you motivated and you know what will make you feel overwhelmed. It may feel great to say, I want to pay myself $1,000 a year, but maybe you do balloons. I don't know how that works when it's only you, unless you're having team members. So it might be more realistic to aim to do 60 to 80K, depending again on your pricing structure. So we're going to walk through this together. So the first thing you want to do is get clarity on what salary you want to be making. Next, what you'll then do is that you want to then figure out how much does it actually cost to run your business. Operation costs, we talked about it. These hidden costs, pull up your spreadsheets, pull up if you're using QuickBooks. This is why I know a lot of people be like, oh, I just don't want to have another subscription. Or maybe you just aren't able to financially have another subscription. So I get that too, because you're like, I'm tight, Jesse, my money is tight. But Here's the thing, you can write that off at the end of the year. I'd rather you use QuickBooks Self-Employed app, which is like 20 something dollars a month. But if you pay in advance for a year, it's even cheaper than that monthly when it's broken down, is that you can with ease just pull up your reports inside of QuickBooks to be able to see this quickly. But if you don't have this, pull up your bank statements and start highlighting the things that are coming out of your business bank account, because we should not be paying for our business and our personal bank account. So you want to pull that, get clear, and just highlight all of the business expenses for last month so that you can get an idea on how much are you spending monthly on your business. I'm not talking about the event portion. So like if you're a balloon artist and you're buying more balloons, that is going to be in your cost of goods sold, not your operations costs. I hope that this is making sense for you. Okay, so once you know what your operation costs are, multiply that amount by 12, because 12 months in a year. Great, we've done that. So once you've done that, that's going to tell you how much on an annual basis, roughly, you are spending on operation costs inside of your business. If you know there's some annuals like your business license and things like that that may not have been in your account last month, just add that so you're aware. This math is not intended to be perfect, but this is going to help you of understanding, are you even anywhere near the goals and price points you need to be making inside of your business to hit your goals? So once you know that, you're going to add both of those numbers up. And that's going to give you an idea of how much your salary and operation costs need to be annually to hit what you're needing to do inside of your business gross profit wise. The next part that I recommend for people to do is to multiply that number by a profit margin goal. The reason why you want to multiply by profit margin goal is because you need to have profit margins. You want to have money in account that possibly is actually accruing interest. Like that's big girl, big girl, big boy, like goals. Like we need to have an account that's accruing interest so that we're also increasing the money inside of our account. So a healthy gross profit percentage should be a net profit percentage, I would say, is going to be anywhere between starting out, let's say 3 to 10%. But again, it depends on the type of service you have and how aggressive you are with pricing your operation costs. So whatever your percentage is, you want to now multiply that by how much your salary. You want to then multiply that percentage number by the total of you adding your operation costs and your salary. The reason why you want to know that is because it's going to give you a visible idea of like, wow, if I am actually pricing my business correctly, how would it feel annually to have $4,500 to decide that you can reinvest back in your business? And if you put it into a high yield savings or something like that, then it can be accruing interest as well and growing in that amount on top of what you're putting in on a monthly basis. So whatever that number is, now you're going to add that percentage number plus your salary, plus your operation costs. And that's going to give you a rough estimate of what your bare minimum for your gross profit needs to be. But there's more. Tax. So whatever that number is that you add all up, you're going to then multiply it by whatever your tax percentage is. If you're not quite sure, reach out to your tax professional. Like I said, for me, it's about 20 to 25%. So if I add up my salary plus my operation cost plus my profit margin goal, then multiply that by that tax percentage, that's going to give me what I would be potentially responsible for from a tax liability standpoint. Of course, there's going to be ways to have more reductions. You might qualify for different write-offs and things like that. Again, as I mentioned, this is not for things to be perfect, but this is to get you to start thinking about what you're doing inside of your business. So now all you have to do is add up your salary plus your operation costs plus your taxable responsibility plus your profit margin. That's going to give you your bare basic of what your gross profit needs to be inside of your business on a 12-month standpoint. That's not your revenue goal, because unless you are let's say, a solo event planner and you don't pay team members for events to help with assisting you, like event assistants or anything like that, that's going to be coming out of your cost of goods. That's not a part of your operation expenses unless those individuals are actually on like a salary, or they are on like they work 10 hours a week, but they're still 1099 or something like that. That would be a part of your operations. But most people that I've spoken to that are doing events, they have event assistants that work with them on a as needed on a as needed time basis. So that's going to be a part of your cost of goods of service, not your operation costs. So I hope that that makes sense for you. Once you have this gross profit goal number, here's where it starts to really get people really convicted. I was having a conversation with a mentee, and when we saw like roughly how much taxes would be and these numbers, she was like, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, but this is what's going on. This is when we go and get our taxes done and we realize, oh my gosh, I have to pay what? 20,000 in taxes and I have to have that money in my bank account? How?" Like, I mean, these are real feelings. I mean, I remember the feeling for me, like when I was like 20 something years old, and I had first started doing a career that was 1099. I still had a full-time job and I was doing other things. And when I went to go get my taxes and I was 21 years old, I owed the government $5,000. And this is back in 2023. So you know that $5,000 with inflation, that's probably the equivalent of like 30 to 40,000 right now. So being like 21, realizing because I did not know I needed to put money to the side because I was a 1099 entertainer, I had no clue. So I don't want that happening to you. And for some of us that are those OGs that have been doing our business, we don't look forward to tax season for this very reason, because we're not taking in consideration these costs. So the thing that I help with people understanding, now that you know, like these are the numbers to understand what your gross profit, you're like, Jesse, all right, I get this equation, but you mentioned about capacity. How does all of that work? So this is where it's really powerful for you to understand inside of your business. You need to have clarity as to how many hours a week you are ideally working currently. So if you're someone that's doing 60 hours a week inside of your business, you need to be honest about that. One of the things I do tell people is that you should not be working on it like in your business for the entire 60 hours. About 60% of your time should be working in your business. The other 40% should be working on our business. So that's doing these videos, or you're doing TikToks. That's you going to networking events. That's you doing sales calls. Those are things that don't necessarily help you of executing your services, but that's what helps you with either drawing clients, maintaining them, and things like that. And if you're not spending that amount of time, chances are you're probably putting yourself in the position of like feast or famine, because you're working through clients and then you're like, oh, I don't have any clients right now. So then you're like, I got to get clients, because there's nothing consistently happening. So you do want to sit here and think to yourself, if I'm working 50 hours a week, I then need to have 50 times 60, so that you understand that that percentage amount is the amount of hours a week you should be working on your business compared to working in your business. So whatever that number is, then you want to sit here and think to yourself, okay, how many weeks in a year do I actually want to work? And I know some of y'all like, I don't like math, and you might be tuning out right now, but my goal is to not overwhelm you. So what you want to then do is whatever that number of hours a week in a perfect week you would be working, you then want to multiply that times the amount of weeks in a year that you actually want to be working. There's 52 weeks in a year. You may be wanting to give yourself 2 weeks of vacation sporadically through the year, or you might be one of those individuals that you are giving yourself 4 weeks because you know that the last 2 weeks and at the end of the year and the first 2 weeks of the beginning of a new year, you want that whole 4 weeks off. I know some people that intentionally do that, but if you're not intentionally planning this out, again, it doesn't happen. So how many ever weeks you plan to work in a year, you would multiply that times the amount of hours you would be working in your business. So it's important to know that number, because that will give you the annual amount of hours in a year that you would be potentially working. That reason why you want to know that is because what you're going to then do is you're going to have this great number. So it might be 1,200, it might be 800, depending on how many hours a week, because you might be watching this video or listening to this podcast and you might be a part-timer. Totally fine. And I would even more recommend for those of you that are part-timers to do this. You want to take time to do this math so that you're really making what you need to make inside of your business, even as a part-time employee or a part-time business owner. You would then take the annual hours a year that you'll be working, and then you would divide your gross profit goal number by your annual hours in a year to work. So let's say the gross profit goal, if you did the equation, came up to $100,000. And then you find out that annually you're only looking to work on your in your business 1,000 hours. You would divide 100,000 by 1,000 to get what your hourly rate bare minimum needs to be. So it's important to know this number, not because I'm telling you to make your bare minimum hourly rate a fact. You can always make it more, but you don't want to ever make it less. The reason why is because your capacity isn't going to change. Your capacity is your capacity. Your operation costs are your operation costs. Your salary is your salary. So if you go less than whatever that hourly rate is, you're not going to hit your goals. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the reality of it. So what you will want to then do is, like, now that you have this hourly rate, this is where you're going to face it. I want you to look at what is the most popular service that people come to your business for. And I want for you to be honest from client acquisition to you being completely complete with that event. So that's you setting up, breaking down, cleaning up things, putting things in storage, whatever that case is, because you're using that time regardless. I'd rather you be honest about it. So from client acquisition to you being completely offboarded with that client, how many hours does it take you from start to finish? For some of you, it might only be 10 hours. For some of you, it might be 30 hours. The part that makes it a little bit more confronting is that I want you to then divide your annual hours work goal. So like in that example, I gave you 1,000. So if your number is that 1,000, but on average, it takes you 10 hours to complete that specific service. That tells you 1,000 divided by 10, I believe it's 100. It would have the capacity to do 100 events a year on average. And you can sit here and think, like, do I want to do that? That's up to you. It's not for me to say. You can be honest about that. But here's the part about it that is important for you to understand is that if your average event takes you 10 hours from start to finish, I want you to multiply 10 times whatever that hourly rate came up to be. So if your hourly rate came up to $89 bare minimum and it takes you 10 hours to do it, that means at bare minimum, you should be having a gross profit per event of $890. So if you have 1,000 hours that you can actually work in your business, but your average service takes you 10 hours to complete, you only have the capacity currently, based on the math you're putting in there, to do 100 events. So if you are making less than 890 in gross profit each event, how are you ever going to hit the goal that you have for your salary? How are you ever going to have enough to put money aside for your taxes? How are you ever going to have enough to cover your operation costs? These things are all going to be happening regardless if you do this math or not. And I will make sure to have in the show notes this written out as clearly as I can, because I want for people to really embrace this stuff. Because at the end of the day, you have to know these things. And I don't like to use have and should a whole bunch. But in this case, if you want a profitable business, I'm giving you the blueprint to understand this inside of your business. And I don't care if you're a high price business, still do this math. If you're someone charging $10,000 to $15,000, I mean, I don't do weddings, but I would assume just the day of alone is like 12 to 15 hours to just execute. I'm not even thinking about the walkthroughs. I'm not even thinking about going to see vendors. I'm not thinking about the sit downs. So even if you're charging all these hours, charging a big amount, but you realize, wow, it's actually taking me 30 hours from start to finish on this wedding. And some people might be 40 to 50, depending on how elaborate your services are. Like, all of these things are occurring. If you take on doing this math, now you can think to yourself, how do I increase my profit? Like, what are some things I can do? So one of the things you could do is figure out, if you're taking 30 hours, what are some systems you can put into place so that you can reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to execute these? What are some of the things that you can implement from automations or processes that can help with shortening that time? Or it might just be you got to raise your price or shifting your packages so you're increasing what your average customer is spending with you, which is really the third thing. In order to increase your profit, you have to have a system. And when you have that system, you're able to improve your efficiencies and your operations. When you are able to know what your profit margins are, you're able to look at what are the things I can do to improve how much my clients are spending with me. What are the things I can do to increase my capacity? Because you can hire someone so that you can do more events, but know that that's going to increase your operation costs if that someone is working with you part-time on a regular basis. So this is where I always recommend for people to look at ways that you can create repeatable packages or packages that add additional customer spend so that you're not feeling the pressure to just stuff your packages with the world, and you're missing out on opportunities to actually make more money with each client that's working with you. Because some of you I know might not feel comfortable with just increasing your prices. So this is where I say, look at how can you potentially streamline what you're offering, but have some of the things that you're just doing for free right now, because you are probably doing them for free. How can you charge for those so that a customer can spend extra money with you? And then I want for you to start tracking your profitability inside of just even your events. So the only way you can do this is by using a CRM or something that's helping you to keep things more visual. So that if you know that you're charging $8,000 and you're going to the store to source things and it's costing um $3,000 in supplies, we need to be making at minimum that $890. You always can go up, but you never want it to be that you charge someone 2,000 and then you paid 1,000, or like, no, 1,500. So like, let's say you charge someone 2,000, but for you to go to the store and source everything costs 1,500 and you walk away with $500 because you're $300 short of what is necessary for you to do the things you need to do inside of your business to cover the things you need to cover. So this is why I always recommend for you to review your numbers, have clarity on these types of things. I thought that this conversation would be helpful because I know that when I'm looking at all of the videos that are super popular when it comes to event planners, I see we love the videos on how to do design. We love to conversate about how to do backdrops. We love to talk about that. But we need to have conversations about running profitable, healthy businesses. If you've gotten value from today's conversation and episode, and if you want more honest conversations about the lessons that I'm learning even through my own journey, comment below and let me know, because I want it to be that I'm having amazing guests like always, but I also want to be able to share a little bit about my journey, lessons learned, if it's going to be valuable for you. So I would love for you to let me know what's one of the biggest takeaways that you got from this conversation today. You can send me a DM or you can comment on this video, because I do read all comments and I try to comment to each and every one, because I value your thoughts and your opinions as I'm growing this podcast, because this podcast is for y'all in the community that I'm very passionate about supporting, because I want for more of us to rise to the top and have the type of business that we're desiring.